Hello, Juan.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
I'm doing fine. A bit sleepy though. We having a long day. I've been up from like 10 to 6, something like that. So, for
Yeah.
meetings.
In what time zone are you? Because it's still a day there, so maybe you are in Latam.
Yes, I'm
time.
GMT -4, so it's 5 over here. Not too bad.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
How is everyone doing?
You're here. Make just. I'm aware the agenda is all populated by me. So if anybody has anything to add to the agenda, please do so.
Shall we start or?
Let's give it another minute and see if anybody else is going to turn up. Although I think this is likely to be all of us.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be all of us, isn't it?
Yeah, let's just get started then.
Cool.
Okay, Agnes is joining. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, let's get started then. As always, let's start with the meeting etiquette. We would love to record this meeting to share it with the community and also in YouTube. If there is anyone in this meeting again sharing this in YouTube, just reach out to me privately and I take care of not uploading this one to YouTube. If not, I'll upload it. We encourage everyone to challenge any language or behavior that is harmful or not inclusive or against our code of conduct. And we will try to remain on mute when other person is speaking and use the reactions to ask for a turn to speak. And with any further ado, let's go with today's agenda. As Ben said, he is owning most of the topics. Let's first start reviewing the action items of the past meeting. So past week, we captured 4 action items. The first one was for me, suggest to Paul Waller, the designer, finding a logo that works better and is compatible with both dark and light modes. I shared this feedback with Paul and I'm waiting for his new version of the logo. Yeah, I'll keep everyone updated about this. Second action item, again, was for me, is related, working in a release plan for the new website, trying to get it on live as soon as possible, instead of just having a lot of new features that can take too much time. go with a more simple approach to have it as soon as possible and iterate. This is what I have in mind, but I love to at least have some changes in the landing page. So we are working on that, and as soon as I have some dates, I'll share it with everyone. But I'm not marking this as complete because I still don't have the dates, but hopefully it's not going to be more than 2 or 3 weeks. We have this team on site very soon, so maybe that week is not going to be so very productive. Let's see. Next action item is create a separate repository for all the branding resources. This is already done, and as soon as we have some updates, I'll be sharing with everyone in this meeting and also with the community. And the last action item was for Ben, is modify the out of scope section with a proposal with a positive messaging, like we are recognizing that we are a dependency to others, blah, blah, blah. Instead of just saying this is not our business, just trying to use a more positive approach with the wording. And I think that this is already done. So this is why I mark this as complete. And that's it for the last previous meeting. Any comments so far about these action items or question? Okay, let's go back to today's agenda. All the points are yours, Ben. So instead of just me introducing everyone, I think that from here you can take the ownership of the agenda and proceed one by one, if that works for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I got a little bit agenda happy last week as I was working on stuff. Some of it is updates, some of it is let's have a discussion about this and see what people think. And some of it is let's make some sort of vague plans about some things moving forward. So the first one is kind of a mixture of update and call to action on providing feedback. So I've continued to be working on the charter. I've had some feedback from an OpenJS Foundation cross-project council member, and most of the feedback is about moving the process out of the charter into a separate document and making the rules that we have more guidelines as opposed to rules. And I wanted to see what people thought about that as a sort of general direction of what we should be doing. I think one or two of you have looked at that feedback already, but I just wanted to give some space to give people to comment and share any thoughts on that.
Well, I'll say I think it's a good idea for it to be separate. I think these the details of the process that we're using are new. We haven't even used them before. So it's very likely that we're going to find, some things work, some things don't, and make adjustments. And we don't want to have to go through the process of getting confirmation that it's okay to change those things every time we need to change something. So I think it's positive to make those separate.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable to me too. Well, I guess I hadn't focused on until this very moment. Does OpenJS have a policy that they want to enforce, or that they want us to enforce, about how hard it is to change the charter? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think it's that. It's more that they have to sign off on any charter changes.
Okay, so yes, then. So yes, it's harder to change the charter than some side document.
Yeah, and it kind of like the example charters they link to, some of them have some process in there, and some of them just have like complete sections omitted and leaking out separate governance documents. And I guess that's kind of okay because they're like each individual project's processes are technical governance stuff which they don't want to be involved in as the OpenJS Foundation. That kind of makes sense. But also then I think, why have it as an item in the charter unless it's just to make sure that you link out to something.
I mean, I think that makes me very supportive of moving it to a separate document, first of all. But I think the reason why it's in the charter is then therefore you're identifying the place where that information is found. But because it's not the same place as the rest of the stuff, it's easier to change. Did I cut out, or is my mic? No, I didn't. Yeah, to me, it sort of makes sense. It's almost like in governmental law saying like, these are the rules of process. And if you want to know the rules for whatever, look over here. And the other place is usually easier to modify. Yeah, that honestly makes a lot of sense to me, taking it out then, if that's the case. I mean, leaving it, of course, maintaining the work and putting it in a separate document, and then just leaving the thing saying governance information can be found here. I guess these are two separate things to me, though. So in other words, there's two separate things. Does it belong in the charter at all? Which now I'm quite in favor of removing it if OpenJS wants to get involved every time that we want to change it. There's a second bit of how prescriptive should we be about the process, which maybe Jason was talking about both on the issue and just now. I think that's a separate discussion. Like, for sure, to me, it should go out of the charter now. This way we have full internal control of changing it. How prescriptive should we be? I think I said in a private message, I'm happy to say it here, I think we should be as minimally prescriptive as we need to be. The best is to be as little prescriptive as required, except if we feel like some people are uncomfortable with that, then we need to meet them where they are. In other words, in general, in my opinion, when people trust each other, as I trust 75% of you on this call, like we can figure out the rules together because we sort of trust each other. So I don't need to write it in advance and make sure that you agree. Like I can perfectly well believe that if like the five of us sit in a room, we can haggle out any needed changes to process documents without needing to sign on the dotted line ahead of time. So I don't feel like we need to be extra prescriptive ahead of time in that kind of scenario. However, if someone says, yeah, but I'm uncomfortable because in the past we've had people who skirted the rules or who did this or who did that, and we need to be a little bit more specific about what this particular how this particular area works, then we should add in whatever detail makes that person comfortable and no more detail than that amount. That's probably my opinion on the other topic.
That's my general approach to the complexity of process is just it has start with nothing and add stuff as needed. And if you don't end up adding it, you probably didn't need it. But I'm also okay with starting with what we've got or what we've defined and trying to make adjustments from there.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I think thank you for your feedback and thoughts on that. And yeah, I think that's a really poignant way to phrase it. Is let's make it as guideliney as possible and add rules as we need to. So I'll work on doing some minor revisions. I might just go, here's a process we've defined, treat it as a guideline for now, and we may revise it because I think I've already spent way too much time on this particular element of our charter, so we want to get that moving. So I'm going to take an action on that. Pena.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say is it helped a lot having everything in one single document, because it took a lot, but at least having everything in one single document, at least for me, was helpful. And if we decide at this point to separate it in a separate document, the effort is less because we already approve what is there. So hopefully it's not going to take a lot of time. So just to add that. So I feel 100% comfortable with what we had. We all of us reviewed it, and if we have to change it, let's change it and continue with the process of onboarding.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful as well. Does anybody else want to add anything to that, or have any comments to share? Okay, move on to the next item. I wanted to sort of briefly talk about Google Summer of Code, and I was mostly sort of thinking about I mean, it's kind of linked to the next couple of topics. I was looking at the timeline for the Google Summer of Code and noticed that it goes all the way up to November. So it's taken, you know, a significant chunk of the year in terms of its timeline. And I wanted to hear people's thoughts on sort of like how much time it's taken, and if they have any guesses as to how much time it will continue to take from them moving forward. And I also wanted to see how people felt about, you know, trying to log how much of your time it is taking up each week, and using that information to evaluate if we feel we should be participating in that in following years. Just to give the context, I think it is a valuable thing to be doing, but it is taking up a chunk of time, and it may be preventing us from moving things forward at a pace we would like to move them forward. So just want to kind of get some thoughts and potentially some data on our particular involvement. What do people think about this?
I'm happy to track estimates of how long I've been, or how much of my week has been spent on that this year. And we can, as you say, use that as data to decide if we want to do it again next year. I'm not going to punch a clock though, like not like that. I'll give an estimate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very, very rough.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think also, I've said this a million times at this point, but we may not get accepted still. So I think this may not matter until after that. But yeah, sure. I mean, I think that sounds reasonable to me too.
Me too. So I will track the amount of time that I am going to dedicate to this. But my only comment regarding doing that exercise of thinking about if this is a worth exercise or not is thinking about what were our goals and think about if we are reaching those goals or not. Because let's give an example. Boti. We tried, not with a lot of noise, but the possibility to become a contributor of Boti was there for very long. And we didn't have the same support that we have right now with Google Summer of Code. So, and the progress in Boti is remarkable in the last month or so. And this, for me, this is a great goal that we already achieved without even getting started with the project. And a similar exercise we can do with data transformation utilities. As soon as we have the tool in the hands of the community, maybe we will have more feedback and much more opportunity. So let's do both, thinking about what time are we spending and what is the cost of that, but also what are the goals that we are achieving.
Yeah, I definitely think, you know, when we come to think about this in future years, definitely along with the data of time, like the things that we've achieved as a result of it, and the benefits and to the project, but also to the community as well, because I think that's really important. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that.
Yeah, and to add something still on the same topic, is something that everyone can see how the acceleration that the community growth has taken since we applied. So we have much more new people in the community. That is great. I can think about some metrics because we apply it without doing a quiet exercise about deciding the goals, but I can just put something together and ask for feedback about what goals can be great to look at when doing that exercise. If that makes sense, I can take that action item, like putting 3 or 4 bullets about goals for JSON schema with this participation.
Yeah, let's definitely have a think about that and see what we want to do moving forward with that.
Great.
Would anybody else like to share any experiences or thoughts of Google Summer of Code? Juan or Agnesh, do you want to share anything from your experience of Google Summer of Code? I think you've both to some extent.
I've seen some
involved.
of the process mainly on applying, but I have not been a mentor or been closely following that up. So I mean, of how time it would take, I have no idea. But at least what I have seen is that for projects have taken like one person, with one project, it seemed that it was not a lot, and the result was positive. They managed to keep around that people that the contributor for a long time. So.
Yeah, thank you, Juan. Agnesh, do you want to add any thoughts on this?
So actually, it's a great opportunity for me, and I've been learning a lot. I have involved in the community for about 2 months as of now, and yeah, it's a steep learning curve for me, as JSON schema was means very new for me, but as I got involved and started contributing to Boti, it's an amazing opportunity for me to learn. Yeah, that's all what I would like to say.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, and we're really glad to have many people. And yeah, JSON schema is a pretty hard topic to dig into, but yeah, we're really glad you're here and digging into the community. So thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next topic, which may seem a little out of the blue, but we kind of haven't moved a lot on the release. I've been chatting with a few different people over the last week or so, and I just sort of throw the question out there, like, do people feel we could move towards having a release freeze in September of this year? Not looking for necessarily detailed thoughts as it's kind of thrust upon you in this meeting, but yeah, what are people's thoughts on that as a timeline or a goal?
Can you define what you mean by release freeze?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, that's helpful. So previously, when we've done a release of the specs, we've had a point where we've frozen the release to give a month of time for feedback, from groups that otherwise wouldn't be able to give the time, but may not be able to give immediate time, but we'll certainly give it a priority over the course of a month period to review, dig into, and feedback.
So essentially, we want a release candidate ready by September, and then release maybe January 1st-ish or something.
Yeah, I mean, I was just seeing what people thought on this. Yeah, release candidate would have been better term, definitely that. So thank you. But yeah, I thought we haven't put any sort of flags in the ground here. So do people feel that would be a feasible timeline?
At this point, I'm not sure, because I think there's still a lot of, I mean, we're not all on the same page about where, where we want to be with the next release. And until we have that agreement, it's hard to say how long it's going to take to get there. And I would say, considering that we're not on the same page right now, it's probably not realistic to have something by September, unless we get on the same page real quick. And maybe we can do that at the summit.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. Thank you.
That would be 5 months from now-ish.
Benja?
One question. This freeze is only affecting the spec. Is that right?
Yeah, that'll be right. It's like a release candidate. And I promised that we wouldn't do anything with that for a month, just to give people that space. But we're certainly not obliged to do a release this year if it doesn't align with what's feasible and what our objectives are. We haven't set out any hard objectives for this year in terms of a release. Julian, do you have anything to add on this?
Sorry, I was distracted on releasing the spec in September.
Having a release candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with Jason that it's hard for one of us to say. For me, the answer is, of course, yes, because my opinion is still that we should release now, today, like a completely backwards compatible release that just has the new date and whatever backwards compatible changes we have. So as far as I'm concerned, I would release now. But opining on convincing the relevant folks, I guess the relevant parties definitely includes Greg. So I have to imagine that Greg probably agrees that September is doable, I think. Yeah, I would think it should be doable September. But I'm the radical one who wants to cut out all the incompatible changes and release what we have now. So I definitely feel it's doable. I think we should discuss as a specific thing the changes that are in the upcoming release, which are not the unknown keyword changes, which are backwards incompatible. Because for me, I still don't fully understand why they're still in there and whether our intention is for them to stay in there. I understand that we put out a blog post saying we think the unknown keyword change is required, but I don't understand the other ones, like the change to contains, or is it contains? Yeah, the one that changes which things affects unevaluated properties, and there's one other that I never remember, which are also backwards incompatible. And yeah, so that to me is the one topic that I'll say I don't understand others' opinions on that yet, whether people disagree and they want to have more incompatible changes than just the one, or whether we just haven't done that work or whatever. But yeah, sorry for my rambling. Yeah, I think September should be doable, and that we should discuss this next week.
I mean, from the sounds of it, if there are like many, I mean, I'm not working on the spec, but I think to Jason's point, if everybody is not on the same page, then it might not, be worth just cutting things up because of an arbitrary deadline. I guess like the beauty of JSON schema is that it will any spec that that you guys put out, it will be stable for a very long time, and if given the backwards compatibility story might actually be backwards compatible forever. So if not everybody's on the same page, just taking the time to be on the same page and then take it from there instead of like backwards from a date might be, you know, better.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I agree, except when I last brought up this discussion of, hey, why are we putting off releases? Like undecided changes aside, why are we putting off releases? The comments last time, I think, in response were, we can haggle whatever is needed for a new spec in a month. And we're way more than a month after that. So to me, I agree with you that we shouldn't have arbitrary deadlines for when we release a spec. But on the other hand, I don't know why we have such infrequent spec releases. Personally, I would just release more often and then hold up backwards incompatible changes whenever those discussions need to be had. So I guess in theory, I agree with you. I don't think that a good way to do releases of software is by setting a date. But on the other hand, when you're release averse, I think doing a release and tearing out all the things that are controversial about it is better than the reverse of continuing to put it off while you discuss things personally.
Ben here.
Yep. What I wanted to add in this topic is not regarding how frequent we release. It's about how we communicate those changes. So I think that we invested a lot in the discussion about what are the next steps. I wasn't here when we released previous versions of the schema, of the spec, but I think that we can make an exercise about looking at how we are communicating changes in the spec and make sure that next time we make a great communication. And if we are not going to release in a short period of time, I think that we can also update the community about what is the current status and what are the items we are discussing and things like that. I think it can increase the engagement, and also it can generate trust with the users and schema implementers.
Yeah, thank you, Benja. I guess going back to some of the comments that Julian was making there, I know we had at some point discussed the potential for doing a release which contained all of the non-breaking changes, as you say, to give people stuff they've been waiting for a while as a kind of like intermediary release. And then we were waiting on the charter for that to happen, and that's taking considerably longer. Well, I don't want to put words into Greg's mouth here, and I don't know what other people think on this, but his feeling was that time had passed and we'd moved on to discussing all of the specifics in terms of what we would do with a more future-proofed release with the compatibility issues well defined. But it's looking like those are going to take a lot more discussing than we had maybe anticipated. So I'm wondering if the potential for doing an intermediary release, like you're saying, Gio, where we tear out the bits which are not compatible, and we put that out and say, here's all the stuff that you've been waiting for, and you can use it now. And then we do the breaking changes release at a further point in time. Does that feel like it still has value, or are we beyond that point in time? I'll open up for comments.
I feel like there's not much value in releasing another spec that's not a stable spec, other than the fact that we've told everybody that the next spec will be stable. I think that people don't like that there's a whole bunch of different versions of JSON Schema, and they have to know all the differences between them. And I think adding one more onto the pile is counterproductive. I think it's better if we just wait until we have the last version. that we're going to give, and then release that. Benja.
Yeah, I'm curious about. Curious. Why? Let me reformulate. So maybe we are having this discussion because we need to show how we are investing our time, or demonstrate that what is the value that we are putting for the community and for the sponsors or the companies supporting our work. And I think is totally fine, but maybe we can show the value of what we are doing, not only about with a new release, but also sharing what is our roadmap or the vision. All that stuff is really difficult to be discovered by any new community member or existing community members or sponsors or enterprises. So if we know that this is going to take some extra time that we expected, maybe if we have in our roadmap, in our plans to release a roadmap of JSON schema, maybe it can this can be an evidence of, hey, we need to accelerate in releasing the roadmap for everybody know where we are going and how we are investing our time. Roadmap, our vision, things that are not there, and maybe it's going to help a lot if we push those things.
At least for my part, I should hope the two are not related. The two being like, I don't think that releases are required in order for those of us who are paid by Postman to look like we're doing things. I hope.
I try to explain that in a more friendly word.
Lighthearted.
Yeah, but
yeah,
I mean, I can understand that maybe some of the people that is investing on JSON schema saying, hey, well, when is going to happen the next spec? Okay, to reply that it's not a date, or it's not a what are the things pending. It's also, hey, this is the roadmap, this is how things are moving, this is how we are investing our time right now, this is how we are pivoting from one topic and another, and this is top priority, but it's taking a lot of time because this and that issue that are linked to the roadmap. But yes, this is what I was having in mind, trying to say it in a more politically correct way. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I would say to that is, definitely, I don't think it's having a release isn't linked to us proving that we're doing work, but I was just kind of thinking, like, in terms of demonstrating the value we're providing to Postman and to the community, and to demonstrate the work that we have done. Would a release be feasible? Or would it even make sense? Just as when I was discussing stuff with Greg and a couple of other people. So I thought I'd raise the question for discussion. And it kind of sounds like we need to think a lot more about what we're doing on that front. So based on that discussion, I think we have a lot of things that we need to hash out and work out. So I'm going to say that I don't think it is feasible, but I'm still open to the discussions. But yeah, Jason, this is something you wanted to add there.
Yeah, I would say that although we don't want to release something because of some artificial deadline that we we think is necessary to show that we're doing work, it's also a good idea to set a goal to help us motivate us to get it done. If we don't set a goal, it's easier to stretch it out. So it's not necessarily a bad idea to say, like, this is our goal is to hit this date. Just not feel obligated to stick to it if we're not ready.
Yeah, I think that's valuable as well, and some of the stuff Benjo was touching on as well. Like we can demonstrate value in other ways as well, and particularly how we're communicating that and the work that we're doing. And I think we should have a better idea of what this could look like when we have a more solidified vision and a bit of more of a roadmap, which hopefully we can do considerable efforts towards that in our in-person meeting. I guess this is kind of leads on to what's not on the agenda. JSON Schema has now planned its first in-person team meeting, which is very exciting. So we're finally going to get to meet the people from the project in person in Vancouver at the Open Source Summit North America. So I'm very excited that that's moving forward. Given some of the discussions, I think skipping over the next agenda item probably makes sense, and it'll probably be one of the things we talk about in the in-person meeting, and particularly as we look to doing a roadmap. So the next item in the agenda was, what are the critical things left to discuss or understand to form a critical path of tasks for a specification release. I think that is something we would need to form as a bit of a roadmap, and it's probably not the best use for time today, but yeah, let's keep that in mind as we move to the in-person meeting. There's one more issue I wanted to touch on today, and that's some of our critical tasks and objectives for the remainder of the year. I haven't been very specific in what sort of things I'm hoping we will achieve as an organization, although I have had some things in mind, and I just wanted to highlight some of them and sort of gather people's thoughts and feelings on those. So I've put a spec release in there for this year. And mainly I'm more interested in trying to have like a definite pathway forward, particularly the spec development lifecycle. I'm mostly a roadmap, so it kind of speaks to what Benja was saying earlier. I'd definitely like us to complete the OpenJS Foundation onboarding. I think that would be a really good success story for us and really solidify our credibility and as a project how we want to move forward. I think one of the critical stories for us this year is developing official spectral rules and potentially some linting tooling as well. The new website is moving along really nicely, and I'd really like that to be something that we finish this year and get out there to everybody else. And the stakeholders and advisory group, I think, is going to be really critical for us getting feedback and thoughts from the wider community, particularly our user base that are otherwise not necessarily involved in our activities, but still big users nonetheless. Firstly, I want to see if anybody has any comments on those items, and then secondly, I want to see if anybody thinks there are any big things I've missed on those brief thoughts. So open up for comments. Benja, is anything you want to say regarding the items which are most strongly linked to the community, which is the stakeholders and advisory group? Is there anything you want to say regarding that?
I like the list, and it's aligned with the last adjustments we have been doing in my roadmap or in the community roadmap in the last couple of weeks. And as soon as I get rid of the new website and I start getting feedback to plan the release, this is my that is not my next priority, the stakeholder and advisory group. I didn't start with a proposal or plans, but I do agree that it's critical and is in my list after I'm done with the website. Yeah. And to add my view about our community and JSON Schema ecosystem, what I have been learning for the last 4 months. JSON Schema is special because we have both specs and tooling, and most of the tooling is outside of our organization, and this is great, but also is a challenge for us to find ways to have all those implementers as close as possible to our efforts and to our strategy. So I totally concur in terms of implementers and also incorporation. So yeah, we will work on that. I'm looking for examples about similar projects with the same particularities regarding specs and tooling outside the organization. So if you have some ideas about projects with similar characteristics, please let me know, because it can help me a lot to think about programs and strategies to work on that. Yeah.
OpenAPI is set up very similar, although not async API. It's just very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I think they have all the tooling. They are working in a strategy to have most of the tooling inside their organization. And yeah, OpenAPI is similar on that sense, but different in other aspects. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, this is one of the projects I'm looking at. Ben, go ahead, sorry.
I don't think I have anything to add at that point. Sorry. Does Juan, do you have anything to comment on that?
I would love to see more tooling in the core of the org. I think, I mean, you know my point and my point of view, but yeah, I mean, I think both have pros and cons, right? I mean, both come with challenges. Even if we go and like start doing a lot of tooling and absorb the tooling in some other organizations, then who's gonna even maintain that? Yeah, I don't know. Just as a point of view, as a consumer of JSON Schema, I think I would love to see more official tooling in the org.
Yeah, how we think about tooling and tooling inside the organization is something that we I really want us to hash out at this in-person meeting, really sort of nail down the feasibility and what sort of requirements we'd have on that. So yeah, thank you for raising that. Julian, is there anything you want to add on this?
Nothing major missing from the list for me. I mean, I agree, of course, on the tooling angle. I think if we do that strategically, that's a nice extra thing. But yeah, nothing major. I think the list covers the key points.
Benja?
I'm not an implementer, so here we need the opinions of current implementers about this topic and community members and also corporations. But in my opinion, I concur with Juan. So if we have more tooling in our organization, in my opinion, it will help us to unlock more opportunities. For example, with corporations. So not only for getting a sponsorship, but also to getting bigger support. That's what I can say. And companies, for example, thinking in bigger integrations of JSON Schema in their strategy, I'm sure that they will be more willing to make the step if they have both the specs and official tooling.
Yeah, and honestly, maybe a slight tangent, but I think a lot of implementations aren't better because we need more how to write implementation documentation, which is another category. I think that showed up somewhere on lists. Like this stuff is just hard, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure that an explanation for a lot of the implementations I've seen why they're not slightly better, I think, is just that they couldn't figure out the right interfaces for their implementation. And tooling could help that, because if you have a tool that they can use, then they use the interfaces that the tool provides. But for some things, I think we just need to write it out. So very low on my list at some point was writing a path through the test suite guide for, like, if you're writing a new implementation, you probably want to start with this keyword and run these tests, and then write this keyword and run these tests. But there's obviously even more than just that for implementer documentation. So I mean, I'm sure most of the people on the call here who do write implementations probably well, I'll speak for myself. I've been maintaining implementation for 12 years, and I'm still not sure I have the exact right interface. So,
well, I mean, I think, Julian, you're touching on the core of the issue, really, which is that, I mean, originally JSON schema was, I mean, easy enough. I mean, I wouldn't say easy enough, but it was, digestible enough that people could implement their own implementations with little guidance, and they would be correct. And I think in that world, I think we would all agree that not maintaining an implementation, having lots of third-party ones, is beneficial. But I think JSON schema has gone through the complexity point that now it is complicated enough to provide an implementation that, for example, I don't think I would trust any implementation that wouldn't come from a person not in this group. And now that has become complicated enough, and this group is the only one that can do it. Then it's like the pressure for having, the tooling ourselves seems to be the most, because it's just too complicated for third-party people to do, even with guidance.
I liked a lot what you said about documentation for implementers, and I'm going to connect that topic with our previous discussion about how to connect better with implementers. So if we work in a strategy to engage with implementers, if we came up with cool resources and incentives like, hey, we have been thinking about how hard is implementing new or maintaining implementations, and this is why we are investing our time in this new documentation. I think that is going to generate a lot of trust and is going to help to get more success in our try to engage with them. So definitely I see a connection in between both. Thank you for raising that idea.
I'd like to bring up what I think is the downside of having tooling within the organization. I think that it discourages outside people from doing their own implementations. Like, I mean, if you're like async API, for example, if somebody finds something that they need a tool for that async API doesn't have a tool for, they're going to say, oh, async API, you need to provide this, or why don't you provide this? And, with JSON schema, if there's a tool, then they just write it, because, that nobody's, it's not our job to write software. It's, the community's job to write software.
yeah, I don't. These are not black and white things. I don't disagree with the the point. I'll take an example from Python, which does this really poorly. So the reason that's, sorry, you guys will forgive my Python analogy, because that's what I'm going to use. The reason CPython is so prevalent is precisely because in this analogy, CPython is JSON schema. They develop both the spec and the implementation. the spec is out there and anyone can create one.
I think with Ross Julian.
That's not promising for his analogy, right?
Yeah. Come back to Ross Julian.
The lesson is that we shouldn't talk bad about Python, right? Live.
You started, Julian, and then
Hear me
the
now.
internet cut you off. You only just started your ramble, so please restart it.
Okay, but you can hear me.
We can hear you now.
Okay, good. Yeah, my silly analogy was in Python land, the spec, which is not really a spec, just an implicit spec. CPython is not good enough at divorcing themselves from the spec, which is the equivalent, I think, of what Jason's saying. Like, if we as JSON Schema, the organization, control both the spec and the implementation, then it reduces the incentive or reduces the amount that people will create their own things. But I think that it's the job of, like, it's the Java does a better job. It's the job of the people controlling the spec to actively discourage the existing tool from being the only tool. So, I mean, I agree in theory that when you have a tool, it disincentivizes others, and you have to kind of counter that by making sure that doesn't happen by in CPython's case, basically saying, hey, we're writing an implementation that people can use, but we're actively facilitating other ones. And in our case, we would need to do the same thing. We don't necessarily corner the market and create tools that, so I might not even agree with Juan that we should have an implementation that fully takes over other implementations. We're not going to write one in every language, certainly. We take point solutions for particular things. Like referencing, I don't think it's possible for someone to write an implementation. Even my blog post, I've torn down and rewritten 5 times at this point. It's impossible. I don't think if you grab someone off the street and hand them the spec that they're going to be able to do it. It's not a whole implementation, and it's just a single part of the spec. But if we had a tool that helped someone implement that piece, you would still encourage implementations. But yeah, you would discourage people from writing referencing implementations. But if someone came along and said they wanted to write one, we would still encourage them. So I don't know. I guess my rambling is to say, yeah, I agree. That's the back and forth. The more tooling you have, the more you're sort of centralizing the power. The only thing to me is I think we just counterbalance that by either actively saying out loud that we're not trying to be that, or just reinforcing. Like if we say what you said before, Jason, if someone comes along and wants to add a feature and we say we have no resources, then hopefully that pisses someone off enough to write their own version of the tool. Go do it. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think it's better for us to have more tools and just be vocal about not trying to use them to corner people than not have the tools at all and then just no implementations work.
Yeah, I agree. There's a balance there. I almost want to say like it's like one thing we could do is create bad tools so that at least we have like a reference implementation, but then people are incentivized to write faster ones or more capable ones or whatever. But it's just intended to be like an easy reference implementation so that people know.
Yeah, I actually like the idea. I would like writing bad implementations, but they show off the right interfaces at least.
Or I do think that balance is is what we should look for, and maybe we can come up with our own view about the best performing implementations and putting around like with Bauti, like the right budgets or certificates or something that can generate the right trust in both implementation users and also in companies looking at integrating for the first time JSON schema. So if instead of just looking in our implementations page and see what fits their technical stack, maybe we can find a way to show like the strengths of the ecosystem. I don't know how to translate that in something easy digestible, I know that is connected with Boti, is connected with some metrics. I don't know, maybe it's just something to talk about, saying, hey, this is what the strongest tooling that we have, and is certified this way. So we trust, and we are, it's not like this is someone maintaining this in India or in Spain, or you call it. It's like, hey, this is the ecosystem, the core of JSON Schema ecosystem. It's not only the spec, it's not only the tooling, it's both. Maybe we can think about that, how we can materialize, I don't know. But this is the things to discuss in that stakeholders strategy that you said.
Yeah, I mean, just on a piece of that, and I know everyone knows this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Bowtie, the stuff that it will tell us is valuable, but of course it's not everything. Like I can tell you, having written 10 harnesses, that the amount of time that it took me to write harnesses varied widely. There were some implementations where I wrote the harness in 5 minutes, and that didn't have to do with how familiar I was with the language. All the languages are easy. There's some implementations that I knew what I was looking for and I found it in 5 minutes. And there's some implementations that took me 3 hours. And I know which ones they are. And yeah, okay, 1 or 2 of them is because of the language, but one or two of them is not because of the language. It's because the implementation is very hard to use. And I don't think that the person who wrote the implementation, I don't know for sure that they did that because they really think their interface is good. I actually don't think that. I think they just didn't know how to write a better one. And so the thing that they wrote is just really hard to use. So like, yeah, my point is basically Bowtie will tell us compliance stuff. Bowtie doesn't tell us other kind of qualitatively important stuff. So if someone gave me $2,000, what I would do is I would go to the university here. I would get 60 undergraduates, and I would do an experiment where I gave them 20 JSON schema implementations, and I timed how long it took them to figure out how to use them. And the numbers you get, I bet you, will be wildly different depending on the implementation. Yeah, we should actually do that. I mean, that's a literal suggestion. Because yeah, it's not, some of this stuff is not, yeah. Anyways, sorry for, yeah. Yeah. I'll write something up.
Yeah, and the things that Bowtie can provide, maybe is the points that we have to think about how to materialize that in a different program or as part of that strategy, yeah, and put everything together.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. That's some really useful thoughts and feedback on that, and we'll definitely continue to think on that. Yes, thank you, everybody, for making time today. I know we're over time, but does anybody have any other business they would like to raise before we depart for the day? Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for making time for today's Open Community Working Meeting. And I hope to see you all in the community and see you again next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.